Thanks for joining me here on News Desk. Parliament has approved an amendment to the Energy Sector Levy Act that will see the price one pays for electricity and fuel reduced by about 3 to 5%. The move will cost government an amount of 308 million cedis as a result of reduction in the public lighting levy from 5 to 3% and the National Electrification Scheme levy from 5 to 2%. Whilst the Minority Leader Haruna Idrisu says the move will negatively affect efforts by utility providers to pay their debt, Majority Leader Osei Mensah-Bonsu insists the NDC did same when it took power in 2009 to bring relief to Ghanaians. Let's look at this more deeply, and I'm joined on the phone now by the former Chief Executive of the Volta River Authority, Mr. Kweku Awotri. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining me here on Joy News Desk.
Good morning to you and your listeners.
Sure, and viewers. But you've been in this system before, you've managed it. How feasible are these plans as it is to shield Ghanaians from paying the actual price for the utilities we enjoy?
Well, I think that, there are a series of taxes that the new government is reducing, which overall send a positive signal to the private sector in terms of helping their businesses. I would say that the key to look at is whether there's any effect on what is called the Energy Sector Levy Act, the ESLA, which is Act 899 that was passed in 2015. And you may be aware that there was an initiative late last year between the Ghana Association of Bankers and the Bank of Ghana to use those funds to pay down the arrears of the sector. So from my point of view, the key priority in the sector is to tackle those arrears, and to the extent that the ESLA has not been affected by those budget cuts, I think that is a positive sign. Further, if it sends signals to players in the industry to help them stimulate their business, I don't think that's a bad thing.
All right, but do you agree with Minority Leader in Parliament, Haruna Idrisu, when he says that the cut in these levies will affect the plan by the previous government to deal with the debt issues of the utility providers?
No, not really, and that's exactly what I'm trying to explain, that there's actually a fund that was set up, the ESLA, which is supposed to address especially the arrears. And the arrears have ballooned. They're over $2 billion in the sector. So those funds have not been touched. The ESLA has not been changed, and that will give us anywhere from $200 to $300 million a year to help pay down those arrears. So from that point of view, I don't agree with the Minority Leader. I do think that there is an ongoing challenge to have cost-reflective tariffs, but I don't believe these taxes speak to that.
And so the government says it will cost it 308 million cedis. Now, we don't know the breakdown as at yet, but is the figure even practicable, looking at the cost involved in the power sector?
I didn't follow the question. You're saying...
Yes, I'm saying that government says it will cost them 308 million cedis. That is in terms of cutting down these levies.
Well...
And I'm asking that looking at how the sector, we know, for example, is suffering and has other issues, is this practicable at all, this initiative?
It can be. Again, it can be. I think that the government is trying to balance the twin challenges of trying to motivate activity in the sector at the same time addressing the imbalances. The current indebtedness in the sector is over $2 billion US. So 300 million cedis, working out at current exchange rates is less than $75 million. Of course, every bit helps, but to the extent that there are other mechanisms to help deal with those arrears, I'm not sure that it makes such a difference to addressing the issues. There are other ways that I believe those issues can be addressed.
So a lot of people talk about sacrificing now for the future, and usually when it comes to government subsidizing power and some of the utilities we enjoy, that argument is raised a lot. But do you think that we will end up paying these cuts anyway in the long run in terms of effectively managing the sector and the decision that this government has taken? Do you think it's prudent, or we'll end up, paying for these cuts anyway in the long run?
Well, subsidies in general are not always a good thing because you end up paying for them down the road, as you suggest. I would make a distinction between taxes that are levied on tariffs that should be applied. And, from that point of view, you should argue that the regulator is the regulator applying the right tariff. And that's where, in the past, those subsidies have laid. And, if we don't address that, we will have a problem. But a tax on top of the tariff, in and of itself, may or may not make a difference. I hope you understand. It's the tariff itself, not the tax, that's really the one that has to be cost reflective. And we have in the past subsidized tariffs. It has not helped us. So it's really the regulator that must make sure the tariff is the right one. And whatever taxes, as long as they're not sort of onerous, may or not make a difference. I think what has happened in the last couple of years is that we really try to put on a lot of taxes, and that's been really difficult for businesses. At the same time, you want the private sector to grow. You can't burden it with too many taxes. But having said that, we still want to make sure the tariffs that you pay for electricity and water do cover the cost of operation. And those are two different things.
Let's move away from the energy sector and speak about the economy at large. Do you foresee this decision having any negative impact on the economy?
Not necessarily. I think it's too early to tell. Again, I don't see that the quantum of taxes are really that big. I think what the government has tried to do is take a number of different line items. I believe there are 9 from the last report I read that add up in different ways. So perhaps the judgment there is, in and of itself, any one of these 9 are not really material, but you add them up and they make a small difference. And for the people in the sectors, they also help. So I think the idea is to stimulate the private sector. The last couple of years have been really difficult for the private sector, so this should be welcome. And again, I do think that the regulators, especially in the water, the electricity, those areas, we do have to worry and make sure that those tariffs are cost reflective. So I would say early to tell, but I don't see them being materially damaging the economy.
Mr. Wachi, the energy sector seems to be bedeviled with a lot of issues. Do you think the dancing around, for example, one government comes in and says we'll subsidize, the other says we won't do it, it is helping the sector to even grow out of the debt or even move forward in terms of being able to provide the demand that is being placed on it?
I think we should always be careful of, slogans that are made by incoming governments, whoever they are. We do have real problems in the energy sector. As I said, I believe our biggest problems currently are financial in nature. And the sector, VRA, ECG, Gridco, owe a lot of money to the extent that, they're really constrained in running their businesses and making capital investments. So I think we as the people, we should sort of see through whatever governments come and ask, are they addressing the fundamental issues? I think right now, some of these tax initiatives are not really speaking to those. There are other issues there to address, and we should be waiting and looking for what is the new government or any government's plan to address some of the fundamental issues today, which, as I said today, they're really financial.
Have we over politicized the energy sector?
Definitely. We always do. I mean, every government says they're doing the right thing. I think the proof is in the eating of the pudding, isn't it?
Sure it
if
is.
you and I are getting stable, adequate electricity, that's the proof. If we're not, then something's wrong. And then we have to say, well, you know, how do you fix it? I think a lot of times there's a sense that there are short-term fixes to the electricity sector. There are not. You know, these things take time, long lead times, and so we want to hear from governments that have thought through the plans in which to address the sector and not just say, well, you know, things will magically improve in a few days or a few weeks or a few months. That doesn't help us.
Thank you very much.
In the past, we've done that, but hopefully over time we'll take a more long-term approach.
All right, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us. Mr. Kweku is a former Chief Executive Officer of the VRA. Now, transport fares will from Thursday, April 6, increase by 15%. The new fares cover intercity, that is Trotro, that's intra-city, that is Trotro, intercity long distance and taxi cabs operations. Now, my colleague Mapito Sabiti spoke earlier to some commuters and operators about this development.
Is that they are in government, and what they feel they can do for the country to run on, they can do it, because we can't say anything. They will come and they will say this and this. We have not been in government before, so we will pray for them and we will see what they can do, and that's what I can say about it. Yeah.
Looking at it on the issue of fuel is really a disturbing factor. As we, all the citizens, we are looking at what is happening. It really gives us a lot of concern, because we are asking ourselves, looking at the economy, things are not going, things are getting harder every day. And with all of this that are happening, why is the fuel getting increased on a daily basis? And the economy is going down and things are becoming so harder. We really wish that let the government do a turnaround. If there is something that can be done in order to reduce it, so that we can at least see what the way forward. Some of us, we have our cars, we can't drive it any longer because the cost of fueling it is too expensive for some of us. And that is why we are forced now to take a public transport. Even at the public transport, it will become too expensive. The prices have been increased. And so we think that it is not really the best, but we are wishing that let the government do something about it so that it can be stepped down, so that life can get better again. Because we are not happy about it. Honestly, we are not. We don't even want to know what actually may be the reason, but we are not happy because it is very, very, very aching and painful. Because life has become so hard on some of us. And the cost of living, feeding our children, all of that, what we're supposed to buy for food, we are now using for fuel or transport. And you discover that 20 pesos that is added on transport on every day, some transport that you were paying 1 city 20 pesos, now they are paying 1 city 80 pesos. It's not normal. That 80 pesos that we are adding is something that we're supposed to be using for something else. So I really wish that let the government do something about it so that it can be stepped down, so that we can go back to normal life. That is what I can say.
Well, transport operators have been advised to comply with the new fares and post the fare list at their loading terminals to avoid any confrontation with the traveling public. The statement that has been released also entreated commuters to cooperate with the implementation. Government earlier reduced the special petroleum tax rate from 17.5% to 15%, and also abolished duty on the importation of spare parts. In the studio here with me to discuss this issue is George Riafe, editor with Joy Business. Welcome, George.
Thank you, Bennett. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you. First, let's talk
about
what went into the decision to increase the fares now, because we are picking up news that fuel is likely to reduce again. So a lot of people don't understand, why is fuel reducing and then we have to pay more for transportation?
Well, if you get from the Ghana Road Transport Coordinating Council, it appears this increment is supposed to take care of a previous cost element that was not addressed going forward. So they believe that in the past, it cost them more to fill their tanks. It costs them more to get a spare part for their vehicle. It costs them more anytime they go into they engage their insurance company to actually renew their insurance first. And therefore, they thought that somebody should take care of this cost. And we are in a market where, even though we believe in forces of demand and supply, it's more of a free market. When it comes to issues of transport fares, these operators have to engage government and justify this increment. But if you engage them personally, they are citing cost of transport fares. I mean, cost of actually, when you look at spare parts, you're talking about the previous increment in prices of petroleum products. You look at the welfare of drivers, and these were some of the things that they considered. Now, if you look at all these cost elements, previously it had gone up, and the main reason was because of the Ghana cedis performance. Now, if you should go into the market right now, the cedi is being quoted around 4 Ghana cedis, a little over 20 pesos. And if you juxtapose that with the previous price,
that's an improvement, isn't it?
If you look at the year-to-date depreciation, it's then a little over 1% compared to the over 10% in the early part of this month. So if you were citing the cedi's depreciation as the main reason for this adjustment, going forward, the cedi is going to be fairly stable. And the cedi is fairly stable, it has implications on that spare part that you want to get from Abosokai or wherever. It has implications on price of petroleum products, which is actually going down. Shell yesterday announced further reduction in price. Gold has also reduced their price as well. Now, these are two giant players in the industry. They command almost half or even more than half. So the over 90 oil marketing companies are also going to drop their prices. It has impact on that cost element that these drivers have cited. So it's more of taking care of those hikes that happened somewhere in January or the latter part of last year. And they think that they should be compensated, and not going forward. They're seeing that their cost element is going to go up, and therefore somebody has to take care of it.
So, George, this is to the benefit of the drivers, is it?
Well, that is what you might say, because they believe that in the past, when all these variables were increasing, you impressed on us not to review our fares, and therefore we believe that the time has come. It appears maybe government don't also want to take a stance which would anger the transport operators, because you don't know when you might also need them to impress upon them to actually hold on with any action. So go ahead. 15% is quite a significant jump if you want to do the math in terms of the transport fares.
It is. So I'm just wondering, as we go on, like you're mentioning, if fuel continues to drop, if the price of fuel continues to drop, are we likely to see another reduction, or they're going to keep it at 15% to be compensated for what happened a few months ago?
Well, previously, these operators themselves raised an agreement with government that if transport fares goes beyond a certain fraction or percentage, more than 5% or even 10% over a quarter, then it should trigger an increment. So if transport fares are also going to reduce going forward, which is often cited as the main cost element.
You mean fuel?
Yes. Going down, then it means that there is no justification. But always when we see petroleum prices going down, then some of them will shift the goalpost, saying that, okay, insurance also going up. What do you call it? Cost of spare parts are also going up. Now we understand that there's supposed to be a tax on spare parts that's supposed to go down. I mean, it looks like it has not been effected yet. So if that one also goes down, and the Ghana cedi is the biggest input cost when it comes to all these variables, and that is also stabilizing. So it looks like going forward, they might have to review these increments. Maybe it might be a one-off increment to take care of that cost element, and then going forward, we should witness a reduction, because from all what the analysts are saying, the forecast, it looks like the cedi would indeed remain strong. Just Monday, we had over $2 billion hitting the Bank of Ghana's account. It has implications on dollar reserves. Now, if I know that the Bank of Ghana is in a good position to supply dollars onto the market, I will not go out and demand dollars when I don't need it. I will not go out and hoard dollars when I don't need it. That has an implication on the performance of the Ghana cedi going forward. So if the cedi remains fairly stable, the cedi remains strong, it means that all these things, tariffs, transport fares going forward, would indeed go down. But there's also another thing about the cost of living, even the larger economy, Beatrice.
All right. George, it's just interesting. I'm just thinking about my conversation with Mr. Awatri earlier about the energy sector levy, seeing some reductions then. So people may be excited that, well, I'm going to pay less for electricity but have to pay more for transportation.
You're right on that one, but again, you also want to even look at your budget as well and how much you consume when it comes to the electricity. So are you consuming more, you're consuming less? But yes, you might pay a little bit less when it comes to consuming or consumption of electricity. But when you go to those bus terminals, you have to up your budget. It looks like if you want to observe the scenario, for those who are operating these transport buses or these fares are going to benefit a lot. But for the ordinary consumer, it looks like you have to brace yourself for some tough times going forward, and even look at what you can do to manage your budget. So for instance, if you were going out every day spending maybe about 30 Ghana cedis, 40 Ghana cedis, 50 Ghana cedis on your food, maybe you may have to review that, because your budget for transport is going to go up. So the fact that
that is if you travel with commercial vehicles, because if you have your own vehicle, your fuel is going to reduce. So it's quite an interesting.
Now if you have your own vehicle, there's some good news there.
Exactly.
Because your budget for fuel is going to go down. If this tax on transport, what do you call it, spare parts is going to materialize, it means that if your car should break down today and you go to Abosokan or even the service stations or whatever, you're going to pay a little bit less. So
we'll
for you,
maybe
that it's tax time. I'm talking about transport pools and all the rest. If I'm coming with you from the same area, maybe you might want to join me at dawn when I'm coming to work, and maybe you can save some budget.
Sure. Thank you very much, John Riafe, for having this discussion with me. Away from business and transport fares being increased, former Member of Parliament for Akwete, Baba Jamal, has disputed reports he supports illegal mining, which is affecting water bodies and vegetation in the country. He tells Joe News his challenge is the method stakeholders are taking to deal with the issue. He says the first move should be how to get the people out of the water bodies.
I will agree with the government if it decides to tackle it gradually and find a lasting solution, a more holistically thought through plan to deal with Galamsey. Galamsey has a devastating effect on our environment, and I have experienced it, and it is something that I am completely against, because it is really having effect. The worst of it all is the involvement of the foreigners, especially the Chinese who are involved in the Galamsey business. I had proposed, and I will propose it here, that look, the first urgent position, the thing that the ministry has to do is to flush out all those who are in the water bodies, polluting the waters directly. The rest of them, one, we must involve the local authorities, the district assemblies and the municipals, because they are the ones living in the localities. They will be able to know where and what somebody is doing in that locality. And then three, we have to be careful how we give the licenses out. Why should we allow foreigners to get involved in small-scale mining? It is against the law. But we have some Ghanaians who are collaborating and fronting for these people. The Galamsey menace was not bad. I lived in Akwete, born and bred. I grew up there when there was still some Galamsey. But that time they were using pickaxes and shovels, so it didn't got too much problem with it. But when the introduction of this huge, heavy equipment is what is creating the problem now. But then there were children who were going to school. There were children who were doing all those things today. That Galamsey menace needs a holistic approach. For example, a district assembly is involved only to the extent that they do publication that the land does not belong to anybody. That's all. They will be there and somebody will come with licenses and he's mining. They have no control over the person. They can't do anything. If there's any control, it should come from Accra. But if the person knows that the local authority, the district chief executive and his staff, they are the ones who should go and inspect the land, they are the ones who should grant them the licenses, they are the ones who can stop them from working, then they will pay attention to what the local people say. And so the local authority can also control a chief or report a chief who is involved there. we need to also enact laws putting more responsibilities on the mining companies. The small-scale mining, for example, you can go 25 acres. They have just some small social responsibilities. We need to put more responsibility on them. We need to introduce the medium scale, where people who are not large scale but are not small scale as well can also be given a higher responsibility. I have never done mining, to the extent that my mother, my father were both miners on when GC, the cast, was in operation. It was a large-scale mining. I was born on a mine. Fortunately for me, all my siblings, none of us is involved in mining. I don't benefit from mining directly.
Do you sponsor any miner?
That's what I'm saying, that I don't benefit directly or indirectly from mining. I've never owned a mine or got involved or own a percentage or share in any mine, never. My name is mentioned because I'm the MP of Akwetia. Of course, I'm representing them. When they get into trouble, my name will be mentioned. I'm a lawyer as well. I need to protect them. So those things come up, and when they are arrested or whatever, sometimes they mention my name, sometimes I go in, and where I can help, I help because I was representing them. Now,
so you intervened in certain issues and arrests,
yes.
But why didn't you let the law take its course so that it could serve as a deterrent?
A typical example. For example, police raided Chebi, and there were 2 young men who were in their room. They found 2 kilos of gold and 1.4 billion old Ghana cedis, now 140,000. The police fixed it. The people call me that, look, this is what has happened to us. Quickly, I was in Akwetia. I contacted my colleague in Accra, lawyer, to wait for them at the police headquarters. So before they got there, the person is there to take stock of whatever that they have seized. Do you understand? If you don't do that, they are likely to temper with it or lose with money or whatever. But before the police took in, the lawyer was there to ensure that it's properly documented. For example, I'm there. Somebody is moving with his excavator from one point to another. They call me that the police have stopped them. Why? Because they say they have their documents, they have everything. But the police is demanding money before they let them cross. They call me.
So you're saying that there's never been a situation where someone was actually found to be an illegal miner and you intervened?
I don't got involved in illegal mining.
Well, the media coalition against Galamsey is being launched at a ceremony here in Accra today. The coalition is made up of the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, GIBA, the Ghana Journalists Association, GJA, and the Private Newspaper Publishers Association, the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, and New Times Corporation. It aims to sensitize the public on the Galamsey menace and seek support to stop illegal mining. The campaign is meant to be a wake-up call to the harm done to water bodies and vegetation by the activities of illegal miners. You're watching Joy News Desk with me, Benis Abubeidu. We'll take a quick break now. We'll bring you more stories when we're back.